Alright, let's quickly run over these patch notes and see what's been buffed and nerfed and some ideas that might come from that. So first up, Earth at 7 Earth has been nerfed slightly. This isn't hugely relevant because you don't usually get to 7 Earth. 3 and 5 Earth is exactly the same. The same with Fire. So no changes to Fire unless you get to 7 Fire, and then there is a slight nerf. A small bug fix to Nature, which is pretty much irrelevant. Water got a fairly big nerf. This would be to 7 Water, same as Earth and Fire. This is pretty relevant for Gauntlet because quite often with Gauntlet Ranger you end up getting to 7 Water, and Ranger is going to benefit a little bit less from that. So the allied regen, he's only going to get 1 less energy per second, as well as the rest of the water units are going to get 2 less energy per second. So I think that's a fairly big nerf to Gauntlet. 7 Empath also got a nerf. So you can see a theme here. It's mostly the 7-part affinities and classes that have been nerfed. This is an okay nerf. I don't think Empath seems really strong, but there's plenty of counters to it, and once you counter it, it kind of seems a bit weak. Though I do agree, it definitely needed some kind of a change, but I think that's a good start. We'll see later that there is actually an indirect nerf to it as well, or there's an additional way to counter it, which we'll go through. So Mystic Shields were apparently stacking, and they fixed this to compensate for it. They've actually buffed fairly decently, so if you have 2 Mystic, you're now getting 150 shield. And then at, I think, 3 Mystic, an extra 100 on the shield, and 150 at 3 Mystic, or 4 Mystic. Mud used to be able to apparently get the enemy opponents down to 0 attack speed, so they've just prevented that from, they've just made it function properly. So I read this as maybe a little bit of a buff to Arcanite. So there was a bug where it wasn't calculating, factoring in Omega power from various sources, such as synergies, augments, and legendary augments. I think that's probably meaning that Arcanite has been buffed. So if you have Omega power from other sources, it's now going to increase your energy, attack speed, attack damage even more. Or as intended, but more than previously. However, the attack speed and energy damage buff may have been accumulating improperly, so it's probably early stage, it's a buff with this fix, and then the accumulation of those buffs is maybe a little bit less. So probably a buff overall. And real quick guys, if this is helping at all, make sure to like and subscribe. Now they've added in an augment that can now counter air, because a big part of why Empath was so strong is because of air. So Clumsy, if you didn't know, Clumsy is a debuff you put on the enemy, and it means they can no longer dodge. It now will inflict Clumsy and reduce the target's healing by quite a lot for 6 seconds. Now you will need to crit to activate this. So if you're playing this on a Scoriox, for example, you're going to have to give him the augment that gives him 60% crit chance, and then you would put this one on. You could put this on another unit next to him, freeing him up for different augments. You just have to make sure that both those units are attacking the same target. You might even just use the 20 cost augment, because the Clumsy doesn't change with the 40 cost. It's just the healing reduction. And Scoriox Mega means his auto attacks do damage in a medium area. So if your opponent's no longer able to dodge and you're landing those single target auto attacks, you're also triggering the Omega AoE damage. So between this augment and the fix to Arcanite, maybe we'll see Arcanite Scoriox countering or being like much more viable against Empath there. These are some pretty cool buffs to Lynx, Bulwark, and Fighter. Basically, the Omega activation is now quicker. They were taking too long to do their Omega like animation, so the delay on the stun and the ability was too much, and I agree with that. So we'll see. Maybe the Lynx, Fighter, and Bulwark will make a bit of a comeback, because I think they were pretty weak. They're quite expensive units, and yeah, they just didn't seem that strong. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe they're just not casting fast enough. And oh wow, they did actually directly nerf the Ranger Glove. So that's the Gauntlet. So just the Omega damage and the Omega power scaling. So 7 Water and the Gauntlet have both been nerfed, which is interesting. Maybe we'll see people using a different carry other than the Ranger within their Water teams. Maybe different invokers, or we'll see how that plays out. I do suspect Water will probably become fairly irrelevant with these changes. I think there was already quite a lot of counters to it. If you stack the energy gaining suppressors and had a good amount of damage, I think it wasn't necessarily that great to start with, but it was, once it scales, it does become pretty insane. So potentially not that fun for the enemy if your Illuvials, 3 of your Illuvials at once are getting one shot. So I can see why that's been nerfed. So it looks like there was an unintended behavior with the buffs and debuffs stacking for the Illuvial frontline, and they think this should bring down the strength of the Atipo and some empaths significantly. So maybe the 7 empath Atipo build was actually buffing, like stacking unintentionally. So that's interesting. So that's another another nerf to the Atipo empath. And that's everything. All these other bugs have been mentioned or not that significant, so I hope that's helped. I think Scoriox might make a return, and Empath's Air have been nerfed pretty hard, but I still think it'd be a relevant build, and Gauntlet Water has been nerfed as well, so we'll see what happens there. Hope that helped. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.